In 1948, the National Party in South Africa instituted legislation that enforced a system of racial segregation and oppression that would last for almost 5 decades. This system, known infamously as apartheid, divided South Africans into classifications based on race and afforded rights and privileges based on those classifications. Members of the minority white population lived freely, as would any Westerner of the time, while members of the majority black population were consigned to poverty and servitude. This is the world where Ernest Cole grew up. This is the world he sought to capture through his photographs. Ernest Cole was born Ernest Cole in 1940. He lived in a black community in Pretoria, South Africa. From a young age, he showed an interest in photography and in the lives of people who lived in the black community around him. In 1953, the Bantu Education Act was passed. This was a law that institutionalized educational segregation and thus provided an inferior education to the black population. Cole had little interest in an education that would only lead to a life of servitude and labor, so he left school when Bantu education was enforced. Because of his race and lack of education, Cole was initially classified as an unskilled laborer. His job prospects were extremely limited. However, he was soon taken in as an assistant to a studio photographer, and he acquired a technical knowledge of the craft. He then worked at several South African newspapers as an assistant or a floor sweeper. During this time, Cole saved his money, began a correspondence course with the New York Institute of Photography, and continued to foster his own dedication to portraying the lives of his fellow South Africans on film. Cole's ambition was so important to him that he decided to trick the Race Classification Board into classifying him as a different race so that he would have more freedom of movement and a better chance of completing his photographic undertaking. Under apartheid, people classified as black had few rights under the law, but people who were mixed race were classified as colored and given more freedom. Although he was black, both culturally and in appearance, Cole managed to convince the Race Classification Board that he was colored. He then changed his name from the more black Ernest Cole to the appropriately European name of Ernest Cole. Cole got a job as a photographer at Bantu World newspaper and soon began freelancing for other publications as well. Effectively, he became the first black freelance photographer in South Africa. In 1966, Cole finished shooting his project and, using the privileges he had gained as a colored man, decided to leave South Africa. He first traveled to Europe and printed his photos. On September 10, 1966, Ernest Cole visited Magnum Photos in New York and presented them with his work. The photographers at Magnum were so impressed that they arranged a book deal for Cole's photo essays. The final publication, entitled House of Bondage, was immediately banned in South Africa, and Cole was resigned to a life of exile. Although he continued to work as a photographer, he never released another major publication. He died of cancer in the United States in February of 1990. Ernest Cole's House of Bondage may have been his only photo book, but it made a powerful statement about apartheid in South Africa. Cole was the first to lay bare the cruelty and injustice that was taking place in his homeland. Cole was not simply trying to make a political statement, however. Each of his messages demonstrates a genuine care and compassion for his people. Cole portrayed the lives of Black South Africans in many dimensions, capturing all of its nuances, its struggles, and its joys. Today, original prints of Ernest Cole's work are rare, but they have certainly not been forgotten. The prints that exist are housed by the Hasselblad Foundation and have been exhibited as recently as 2011.